It's now my pleasure to introduce Ann McLean, one of our earliest supporters of the Jefferson Council and one of our great volunteers. Ann holds a PhD in art and architectural history from UVA. She describes herself as a mother and wife, mother of 4 children, founder of the Hunter Classical Christian School in Richmond, as a civic activist, freedom fighter, and most importantly, chair of the Jefferson Council's Student Liaison Committee.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. I am so excited to look out and see everyone here. Thank you for taking time to come on a Tuesday afternoon. It is just wonderful to see a room full of people that care about the university and care about our young people. When Tom Neal asked me to chair this committee, I jumped at the chance because we have to remember, as we say in classical Christian education circles, to keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is the next generation and these precious children that come up here to learn the best that's been thought and said, and to learn, as someone said earlier, to follow the truth wherever it may lead. So I have the best time getting to know these students, and it's been truly, if you've got to go through a Bolshevik revolution, it's kind of nice to do it with some awesome students. So UVA's Student Liaison Committee is unique because not all of our Alumni Free Speech Alliance groups have a Student Liaison Committee. So my hat is off to Bert and Chip and Tom and Jim for even conceiving of the idea. And so we do try to protect their voices and get their back. As I guess Joel said, we are there to have their back. It's fun to do that. We meet every month. We met by Zoom for a long time. Now we are opening it up to in-person meetings. And you are going to enjoy hearing these stories, although they are a little sad, because anyone over the age of 40, I don't think, who might be with us tonight can really understand what has happened to the ethos of the grounds and that very special feeling Joel was talking about that has been a part of UVA. So we're there to support them, to engage them, and I really urge alumni to get involved in students' lives. Really find out what are they interested in, how are things going on campus, if they don't happen to go here even, So these students are the eyes and ears for our Jefferson Council as well. So we can test the waters, take the temperature, find out how much bullying is happening, are there certain classes that are less open, and the students have been amazing. So our mission on the Student Liaison Committee is to foster dialogue and free exchange of ideas among students and professors, to promote respect, integrity, and excellence, while supporting the 4 pillars. Does anyone here want to tell me one of the 4 pillars in the audience? Can anyone name it? Honor code, very good. That's 1. 2, does anyone? Preserve the Jefferson legacy, fantastic. That's 2. What would number 3 be? The lawn, preserve his buildings and the integrity of the lawn, the UNESCO Heritage Site. And the 4th, obviously, I'll just... Yeah, we got that, get Bert on the board. The 4th is the free dialogue, free expression that we're all here to talk about. So I want to give some credit to some of the adults that attend our monthly student liaison meetings, and that we couldn't do it without them. Number 1, Buddy Weber here, who's a Top Gun and an attorney, and he has the back of these students. He gives cards. If they get bullied, we have him that says, I can help you. And Morgan Bettinger, who is with us tonight, I'm glad to say, she can attest to his skills. We also have the legal talent of Sarah Saunders, and she helps me with the minutes. Alan Stam is on there, Bert and Jim and Tom, and I'm sure I'm leaving someone out, but it's great to have others on our board attend. So I'm just going to leave you with a thought that came up. Character is in our founding documents at UVA, and Walter Smith, who's a crackerjack researcher, he brought early documents up, and it talks about the character of the students. And I look around in this room, and I see so many men and women of fine character, and I think we need to really preserve that and keep that a part of the Virginia way. It's more precious than gold, and it's really important. So Ronald Reagan said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free." And I just had a lovely conversation with a gentleman who came as a guest, and he is also a Christian. He liked my cross, and I do think that is very important to remember that Jefferson said, "Adore God." He did. He gave that advice to his godson, Thomas Jefferson Smith, and that there can be no freedom without morality, said Edmund Burke. So with that, I'm going to let the students come, and here is Lauren Horan, who is one of our brightest lights, and she's on many of the committees. So there you go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Horan, and I am a third year. I am a politics major with a Spanish minor, and I'm really happy to be here tonight. So as it may say up there, I'm here to talk about biases in the political science department. I will cover that, but there's a couple little directions I might go as well. So I wanted to just start out by saying that, the biases that you may think are in the politics department, they may not be as explicit as you might think. In my experience, I've had a conservative professor who is very, forward, and I'm a conservative, this is my life experience, this is how it's gonna be. But I'm not going to grade you in a way that may jeopardize you, or I'm not going to say that because you lean this way, you're wrong. And I've also had that experience with a more left-leaning professor who was outright the first day, this is what I believe. I'm not really favorable to certain conservative viewpoints, but you know what, at the end of the day, this is about you forming your own opinion. Maybe that's just because I also know which classes to take and avoid the super scary ones, knowing that my grade will be in jeopardy, but that's been my experience so far. I find the issue with the teaching assistants, because there you have multiple assistants in the same class who, I could type up a paper comparable to another friend and I could get a C and she could get an A, and it's all because it's subjective grading. And so that's where you have to be really careful and look into and see who's grading your things, and that's where the bias comes from in the politics department. I'll also say that the bias also comes where you least expect it. I mentioned how I'm a Spanish minor, and you might think, really, politics in Spanish classes? Oh yes. When the Colombian president and vice president were elected last year, I found out I had to write a paper about their socialist policies, and we essentially praised them in Spanish class. So I've learned to write to appease a bias in English. I really wasn't expecting to write to appease a bias in Spanish, but now I know how to do that as well. So I just want to put out there that, for us to continue to fight this threat on grounds, we have to look and see where these biases are coming from and see, they're in places where we least expect it. And so, as I said, they're not exclusive to the politics department. So if we want to promote intellectual diversity and enlightening discourse, we have to keep our eyes open for instances that stifle free speech university-wide. One of my favorite quotes, it comes from Thomas Sowell, who states, "Freedom has cost too much blood and agony to be relinquished at the cheap price of rhetoric." There's no reason that my perspective should carry less weight than any other student here just because it's on the grounds of being a differing opinion. And so when we succumb to the criticism of those who don't agree with us, what value does our free speech hold? So I don't express all this to escalate the situation on grounds to some extreme and make everyone think there's about to be like some war and backlash. But I also say that I've come to realize that we have to acknowledge these threats to free speech and then anticipate where they come in the future. And so I hope you all leave today by realizing that sometimes they arise where you least expect it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Skylar Jackman. I'm a third-year double majoring in environmental science and environmental thought and practice. Yesterday, my professor told us a tale about a minister to the emperor. At night, the minister stumbled upon a man crawling on the ground under a streetlight. Confused, the minister asked why he was doing that. The man said that he was looking for a ring that he had lost earlier. The minister asked, "Do you remember where you were when you lost it?" The man says, "Yes. I was standing under the shade of those trees over there." The minister was confused. He asked, "If you lost the ring under the trees, why are you looking for it over here?" The man said, "It is dark under the trees. How would I find a small ring in the dark?" I'm looking for it under the streetlight because I can see clearly here. This story provides a great metaphor for the classroom. The shady trees represent the challenging conversations where opposing views construct a back and forth which allows students to form their own opinions. Instead, we crawl under the streetlight where the discourse is free of argument and the pressures of speaking of different perspectives, ultimately inhibiting self-conclusions. In other circumstances, the classroom practically exudes a prohibition of differing beliefs from those being taught. It would be as if guards encircled the man at the streetlight, forcing him only to look for the ring there. The university is a space that should foster discussion, not hinder it. Overall, my critique of the sciences is that they should celebrate broader perspectives and diversity of thought. In my environmental science classes, I face the challenge of relearning the world through the lens of secular science, whether that involves the length of geologic history, creation of the universe, or animal evolution. The information is presented as facts to learn instead of an emphasis on theory. The various hypotheses are rooted in secular thought without mention of theories with non-secular backing. If science is defined as the study of the structure and behavior of the world through observation, experimentation, and testing of theories against evidence, then why are the non-secular thoughts not being presented if they have supporting analytical evidence? Why is the data that they attain, possibly debunking secular hypotheses, not presented? Science in the university is swayed to tell a specific narrative through precise cherry picking. Maybe widely accepted theories are only widely accepted because they are the ones being shared. Although theories differ due to variable metaphysical views, that does not mean the answer is omission. We should not teach only secular thought because it may act as a middle ground. And to be clear, I'm not asking the university to develop a religious curriculum. I'm only asking for presentation, acknowledgement, and openness to broader perspectives. On my first day of anthropology, I was not expecting to hear that Christians and white people are the reason for the annihilation of cultures due to their putridness of their missionary lifestyles, or that I should feel ashamed if I have a similar background. In another class, I was told that if I actually cared about the environment, I would vote left and definitely not for Trump. Universities should promote open dialogue so students may configure their own thoughts on the world through discussion, not a place where the professor tells students what to think. I leave you today with this question: where should our university find homage? Under the streetlight or under the tree line, where authentic discourse leads students to self-discoverance? Thank you. I will now pass it on to Ian Schwartz.
Good evening, all. My name is Ian Schwartz, and I'm a fourth-year student majoring in history and government. I would like to thank the Jefferson Council for permitting me the opportunity to speak this evening, as well as your strong and generous support for the values of Mr. Jefferson's University. Teaching history for what it is important. The study of history for me is not simply an academic pursuit, but something that formed my upbringing. My father teaches history at Christendom College, a small Catholic college in Front Royal, Virginia. His example showed me that history was not merely a collection of names and dates, but an effort to make the past as real and vivid as everyday reality, to give flesh and blood to the ghosts of the past and cause them to reveal their secrets to us in the present. I also observed his complete dedication to studying his subject. Every day he would be in his study, reading and writing about people who some might cynically term dead white men, many of them little known outside his specific area of knowledge. From a young age, this provided me the model of a true historian, someone who loves what they study, no matter how consequential in worldly terms, who immerses himself entirely in the past, who seeks to understand people as they understood themselves. Observing him over the course of my childhood inspired me to undertake the study of history here at the University of Virginia. Unfortunately, while there remain many excellent historians, including at this university, I have seen during my time here that many others, perhaps the majority, have abandoned their scholarly vocation. Their fundamental interest lies not in gaining a deeper understanding of the past, but in promoting political causes. The study of history has become a means for them to construct a picture of the past that suits their ideological persuasions. They seem to have no real love for what they study and view it instead as material to be weaponized for their present purposes. This is especially clear in the ritual denunciations of Thomas Jefferson, the founder of the University of Virginia, but it has pervaded all areas of historical knowledge, from antiquity to modernity. History is often rightly associated with memory. Just as each person can only understand themselves by their past experiences, cultures require the fullest possible illumination of its prior history in order to achieve collective self-understanding. Yet, I would argue forgetfulness is also a necessary condition for historical knowledge. The historian must forget the prejudices of his own time in order to uncover the true nature of the past. History is known as a discipline for a reason. It requires those who study it to sacrifice, at least temporarily, their most deeply held convictions in order to grasp the character of those who came before them. For this reason, it has been said, to make the ancients speak, we must feed them with our own blood. I hope that we all, and especially professional historians, might take up this motto rather than continuing to subordinate the past to political projects. Thank you, and God bless.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Deaton. I'm a fourth-year biomedical engineer, and I'm speaking to you today about some of the biases that are being purposely taught in the UVA classroom, specifically in two classes that are required courses for engineers at UVA. The first one is STS, which stands for Science, Technology, and Society. According to the UVA website, the STS program is there to empower future engineers to, quote, creative, ethical, and inspired contributions to the design of our socio-technical future, end quote. The second class is the fourth-year capstone class. In this class, quote, students pursue independent research on a question or problem of their choice, engage with the scholarly debates in the relevant disciplines, and produce a substantial paper that reflects a deep understanding of the topic, end quote. However, the topics discussed in these classes tend to be politically left-leaning and off-topic. Here are a few examples. One of the books assigned to me in STS gave me anecdotal stories which describe discrimination and sexism in the workplace. The stories were genuinely awful, but anecdotes are not data. Nevertheless, the book claims that this racism is rampant in the workplace. The author says, quote, scratch the surface at all kinds of companies, from Silicon Valley's unicorns or tech cities around the world. You'll find a culture that routinely excludes anyone who's not young, white, or male, end quote. This is offered with no data to back it up. Another book that was assigned reading had the first chapter titled, quote, Capitalism, the Cult of Self-Sufficiency, end quote. This author then made a case for a hybrid form of capitalism and socialism, where he states, quote, it's obscene for one man to have $200 billion, while a single mom of three holds 3 jobs making $7.50 an hour, working for that same man as she attempts to make ends meet. He believes it is possible to have an equitable redistribution of that wealth among all parties involved in creating it, end quote. While the woman's situation is awful, the author completely ignored any responsibility of the woman had for her own plight any responsibility from the father of those children and ignore the social welfare programs that are being used to prop up that single woman, paid for by tax dollars. In other words, paid for by the billionaire she works for, because where else is the money going to come from? As we know, the top 1% of this country pay 40% of the taxes. Another notable discussion was prison system reform. Reforms based on the ideas that the criminal justice system and the prison system are somehow profiting off people committing crimes and purposely targeting minorities and low-income groups, since, as my teacher stated in class, quote, all cops are bastards, end quote. Yes. And this is just STS. The second class was Capstone. This regularly involved lectures and speakers on topics which had nothing to do with our projects. Topics that were covered included equity versus inequality, the value of empathy, which they expanded to include things like finding a solution for childhood obesity, and socialized healthcare. The speaker for socialized healthcare eloquently stated, quote, I have no idea why people oppose this. I think they just want others to suffer, end quote. In conclusion, I don't mind hearing about political and social views that are different from my own. What I do mind is I am always a sole voice in the room questioning these assertions. When I speak, I'm usually met with dismissal or secrecy. For example, when I asked why engineers should be fixing childhood obesity, since we are engineers, not these kids' parents, the professor instead said, quote, yeah, but it's something we should worry about, end quote. Yes. Another day in class, we were discussing equity versus equality. When the TA stressed equity as being more important than equality, I argued in class that their idea of equity is an impossibility, since it means equal outcomes rather than equal opportunities. After class, the TA who taught this lesson came up to me and said I was right, and he agreed with everything I said, but he, quote, had to teach it this way, end quote. He gave no other explanation, and I didn't ask for one, since we all know what would happen to him if he told the truth and agreed with me in that classroom. Until this university and education in general returns to an era where facts are valued over feelings and anecdotes are treated differently than data, we will continue to be an incubator for activists, not free thinkers. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul, for all that. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Nick Cabrera, TJC Advisory Board Member and Young Americans for Freedom President. Next month, I'll be graduating from the College of Arts and Sciences, where I major in astronomy. One would think that astronomy, the branch of science that deals with celestial objects, space, and the physical universe as a whole, would be far from the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that our university administration constantly shoves down our throats. But it's not. In fact, each week, the Department of Astronomy hosts DEI lunchtime discussion groups. Some of the topics covered in the past weekly lunches include: what is decolonization, social media and activism, the anti-racist classroom, and the ending of policing. Whenever I get an email with the new topic of the week, I find myself pondering the question of how these conversations are beneficial to the study of astronomy. Right? Asteroids headed towards Earth don't care about the 1619 Project or anti-racism. And surely Earth has much larger climate issues to tackle than to be using valuable resources in the Department of Astronomy to study the end of policing. Through the DEI discussions, they are voluntary. When discussions like, is it okay to use the word colonization in astronomy invade the classroom, they are no longer voluntary. Last year, I had the opportunity to enroll in a planetary astronomy course. It was cross-listed in the Department of Environmental Science. And near the end of the course, we talked about the ethics of exploration. And we had a discussion on whether or not the word colonization should be used when referring to the colonization of other celestial objects, like Mars and the Moon. We were then lectured by the teaching assistant and planetary geologist on the history of colonization and the harm that this word may inflict on native communities. We were lectured on Columbus and Magellan. The professor said that planetary exploration has served to glorify and endorse past conquest. We also studied a piece by Luciana Walkowicz, a famous astronomer, and she said that these explorers, in reference to Columbus and Magellan, also were entirely men of European descent, and we should be careful that this image does not dictate the picture of who is an explorer of space today. I want our taxpayer dollars to fund the most qualified to explore space. I don't care if they're all women, if they're all black, all white, or all men. Those chosen to go to space should be chosen on merit and ability, not on gender or the color of their skin. After this lecture, we were split into groups. The professor said, if you think it's okay to use the word colonization, go to the left side of the classroom. And if you don't think it should be used, go to the right. We then debated. It was 2 against 28 without warning. And it was honestly an intimidating experience. DEI is not just voluntary at this university. It's being spewed into the classroom effortlessly and with complicitness of the student body. Keep in mind, this professor in the Department of Environmental Sciences is the same one who scheduled a field trip Easter weekend. The university has lost its founding Judeo-Christian values. We must rebuild them and rid the university of the DEI initiatives that are a guise for discrimination. And I now have the honor of passing it on to a good friend of mine, YAF and CR's member and former student council presidential candidate, Vidar Hageman.
I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank the Jefferson Council for stepping up to defend this university. I want to thank the students previously for speaking and sharing their experiences, and Mr. Lowry for taking your time to be here. My name is Vidar Hageman. I'm a third year here at the University of Virginia, religious studies major from New York. So I just want to talk a little bit about my experience running for student council president. And by and large part, it was a pretty peaceful experience. I haven't gotten backlash since my run. But the one thing I can say about the process, it is a process for insiders against outsiders and not for the rest of the university. I had to send probably 24 emails to the University Board of Elections president just to clarify simple processes on when I had to get signatures and when debates would be, among other deadlines. And especially when you look at organizations like the Cavalier Daily, again, another group for insiders to advance a political agenda. It is not about representation of the rest of the university. And this was my experience, that I had to scramble pretty much by myself and with help from other people here to put together a campaign. Initially I had people, and then people left, but from the beginning, my opposition, they had what they called the Community Coalition, and 3 people ready to run and who were already on student council and ready to rise again to power. And they ran on many controversial points, including creating a black experience for black students in dorms, which I believe many people correctly insinuated black-only dorms at the University of Virginia. And we've seen this kind of experiment on other campuses, and that's what it has led to. But that is the group that won. And now we have to ask ourselves, why is that? And why that is because the group that wants to take power, the group that wants to advance their agenda, is going to always beat the group that wants to be left alone. An organized minority will always be better than an unorganized majority. So we have to look at ourselves and say, what institutions, what groups at the University of Virginia are we going to take back? It starts with the University Board of Elections, starts with the Cav Daily, it starts with class president and class councils, encouraging friends, encouraging grandkids, encouraging kids to run and say, we need you in this position. It's talking to friends about organizations on campus, whether that's a church group, whether that's the Jefferson Independent, an alternative to the Cav Daily. We have to build all our alternatives, not just for ourselves, but for the rest of the university. Because if we try to just come back to what it used to be, we're never gonna get there. Because there are many people who are set out and saying, you may have been a part of this university, but you're no longer a part of it. That is the perspective of the people currently running it, and that is the perspective of many of the students. And the only way to fight back against that is saying, no, that is not our perspective, and that's something that we're going to change. And I thank you all for being here because you clearly understand that message and what it's going to take. It's going to be about not just convincing the students, but it's going to be about getting sideliners, the stress sideliners, as we saw from Professor Stam's slideshow, and getting those people off the sidelines, getting them explicitly involved. This is not a time for stress sideliners. Too many of us, too many people we know have been stress sideliners, and that can no longer be the case. Otherwise, we are in a losing battle. So I'm just going to leave you here with one quote, 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 through 2. I charge you, therefore, before God and the Lord Jesus Christ. My bad, forgot it. I charge you, therefore, Lord Jesus Christ. Got it. I charge you, therefore, before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who will judge the living and the dead at his appearing and at his kingdom. Preach the word. And again, last part there. Preach the word. I don't know. I'm losing it. No, I know. I have them too often. It's bad. No. Yes. Be ready in season and out of season. Convince, rebuke, extort with all long suffering and teaching. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.